All right, hello everyone. We'll get started in just a minute. So my name is Justin. I'm from ClickUp. I'm a trainer here. So thank you for attending our webinar today. Today what we're going to go over is IT use cases. So first things I want to point out, looks like we just lost, okay. First things I want to point out is that there's a poll. So check out the chat questions and polls interface on your webinar interface and have a look at the polls. There's a question there about your use case. So in this webinar, we're going to cover IT help desk and compliance, and then we're going to start to branch out into whichever ones the most attendees are using. So have a look at that and tick the ones that apply to you, and we'll kind of adapt the webinar as we go based on your responses. Cool. Okay, so a couple of expectations as well. So we are recording this webinar. You'll get a recording of this. It'll also be posted publicly, just so that you're aware. And it'll run for about 30 minutes to an hour, just depending on how many questions we have and what custom use cases people bring up. And a little bit about me. So my name is Justin. I'm a success coach at ClickUp. I do a lot of training videos. Basically, my job is to figure out how people can use ClickUp really well and then teach them how to do it. So I spend most of my days thinking about different ways to use things and how to integrate it really well into your work, your workflow, and getting your business running well. So what I have today is a couple of example use cases. Now these are really basic. So what I'm hoping is that we'll start out with these, and then if I can get some comments coming in to see if this matches what you do or if you do things differently, then we can start to build out the details so they become a little bit more rich and we can kind of get a really real life use case going. So if everyone can have a look at the chat panels, I might get a couple of things off you first. So first of all, have a look at the polls, answer that use case poll, and then also in the chat section, if none of those meet your use cases, chuck it in the chat what you use ClickUp for or would like to use ClickUp for. And then once you've done that, if I can get everyone to let me know where you're dialing in from. Okay, David says, can't see a poll on the rain. That's probably on me. Let's see if I can make that work. All right, hold on just a second. I'll remake this. So use case. So the options that I've got here are IT help desk, compliance, inventory tasks, that's what we got. ECDR, planning and tasks, and inventory tasks. And incidence reporting. Thank you for letting me know that that wasn't visible. That's very helpful. Is it visible now? Awesome. Okay, great. Perfect. Yes, I see the other one was marked as draft. Okay, great. So yeah, if everyone can put in what matches their use case. Looks like we've got a couple already. Fantastic. We'll keep that going. And I'm going to be monitoring both the polls and the chat pretty closely throughout this webinar so that we can kind of adjust what we're doing and make sure it suits you guys really well. Cool. All right. So let's jump into this example use case I have here. So for our example company, they've got an IT department which is currently setting up their workflows on ClickUp. The company that they work for does design. They do custom building and mass production of high quality axes. And so the IT department has a couple of functions. They have an IT help desk function, which is ticketing. So anyone else in the business can submit a ticket for, upgraded privileges, new hardware, whatever, that sort of thing. And they also need to be able to prioritize and escalate those just as part of their regular workflow. They also have compliance and monitoring to do, so perhaps they need to meet a international standard for something or other, security. So they need to have a set of tasks that are done in order to continually meet that. So that's probably got some initial tasks to get the certification and then some repeating tasks to maintain compliance over time. That could be things like reviewing alerts, logs, patching server systems, testing, doing tests or other events, and then sign-offs on various plans and things, particularly from other parts of the business. They might need to sign off that they are doing this thing or that thing. Then we've got incidence reports if anything does come up, and then docs just to document the various objectives, plans, maybe some diagrams. And the company has marketing, operation, accounting, leadership, HR, and customer support teams outside of that. So we won't really cover that, but that's just nice to have as additional context. Now, so what I'd love for everyone to do is, if that kind of matches your use case and why you're watching this webinar, great. If there are other parts that you do that aren't listed on here, please chuck them in the chat and we'll start to build things out a little bit more. So we've got 3 who have said other. Okay, great, and 1 on inventory and 1 BCDR. Yeah, that's right. Brilliant. Plus project management, David. Yes, okay, certainly. Project management is obviously a big use case of ClickUp. Cool. All right, keep putting those comments in, and we'll jump in and get started on the help desk use case. Cool. All right, so basically with help desk, the very core of it is a ticketing system. So people are able to easily submit requests, and then we action those. So in ClickUp, the easiest way for that to do that is with a form. So people can fill out a form, and then a new task will be created. So the first question when we're setting it up is, where are all these tasks going to live? So here I've got a new space I've called IT Webinar. And one question would be, do we want to have one form or multiple forms? So if it's quite a low volume of requests, we'd probably just have one form, comes into one place, nice and simple. But if we were at a big company, we had lots of different, like maybe hundreds or even 1,000, requests coming in on a daily or weekly basis, we might not want to start separating things out and kind of routing them differently depending on who needs to look at it. So I think, for example, if we go into the help here and ClickUp, and I think it's submit a bug, if my memory serves me correctly. No, we just got one form. So what you could do instead of that is, if you kind of clicked on a link like that, it might have like 4 different options, and you could choose which one it is, and then each one will lead you to a different form, and that way you can kind of route things based on that. Other examples of that would be giving each department in your company a different form, so that all route separately. I think most people, though, are just going to go with one. So up here, I'm just going to create one list, and we'll call this IT Help Desk. We've now got a list under the space. We don't need a folder. If you were doing multiple forms, you might put them in a folder, but I just like the extra click of having to open the folder all the time. Now I'm going to go straight away and create a form view. Okay, and now here we need to put in our questions. Now, I'm not actually an IT, so I don't know what the best questions would be, but let's call this IT request. So we want to put in a task name for sure. And I guess we're going to want to have a description. Just call it issue name. Hopefully people can summarize the issue. You might want to set this up a little bit differently just to try and get the best possible responses out of people, particularly if people have trouble, summarizing the issue well. Brian, that's brilliant. Computer name, error message, how long it's been happening. Great, we'll chuck those in. Okay, and we also put in a priority. We actually allow users to prioritize it themselves. You might not like to do that, but it does give us an idea of how much people care about it more than anything else. And obviously a description here. So let's just say, please enter more details. Now with the points that Brian put there, so computer name, error message, how long it's been happening, we could either do those as separate fields, so we have quite a lot of different fields, or we could have kind of like basically ask them to put that all in the task description. Now, one option we do have, I believe it's limited to business plan, is any of these questions. We can also actually, yeah, if we use a new custom field, and we use like long text or text, I might go long text here. Yeah, and we'll say like how long has it been happening? This might be more related to a bug issue rather than like a privilege request or something, but anyway, that's fine. And then what we can also do is add all of the answers to the description of the task. So even if we have multiple custom fields, we can still have them all in the description as well. And then if we go to the 3 dots here, we can do that on a one-by-one basis. So that each, we might have this one added to the description, but not that one, etc. Not all fields can do that. It is limited to the text fields that will work well with that. There's also this hidden field option. We might talk about that later. Basically, that allows you to pass information directly to the form without the person filling it in and seeing it. So for example, if you were using one form, you could say, this one has a field that is like department, and you put in, marketing, and then you give them the link to that, and the marketing text is in the URL. So whenever they submit it, it says marketing, even though they never typed in marketing. It's a business feature. It might be useful. Depends on what you're doing. Cool. Let's chuck a couple of extra ones in. So let's just go text. We'll go computer name. And what else have we got? Error message. Error message. That's a good one. So this, this one's quite optimized, I guess, for having issues with computers. If you were also doing like a request for hardware or upgraded privileges, you could do a separate form. That might be quite a good way to do it. Or I guess you could try and make these questions kind of match both at the same time. So for example, we could just turn off required here. And that way they don't have to answer these if it's not actually a bug issue. Cool. And this is currently active, so that means that people are able to use it. And once we hit share, we can either embed it somewhere, or we can just get a direct link that we can share somewhere. And you can as well put a picture and add a description and some other bits and pieces. I'll let you guys play with that. So once we view the form, it's nice and clean, nice and simple. We can remove the branding if we want. I do believe that's a business plan feature. And then we've got it nice and simple. So once we chuck it in, let's say real basic computer won't turn on. This is a bit tongue-in-cheek, but I'm sure you get some requests like this on occasion. I'm going to consider this urgent. This computer all morning, and error message. Okay, so Brian asks, how did you save it? So because this is, I guess, on the cloud, and it basically just saves constantly, so there's actually no save button. So anytime I edit one of these fields, it basically just saves straight away. I'll change this field, and once I click out, that should be saved. And if I go to view form again, we should see that update. How important is this? Yeah, so it's just kind of constantly saving. Yeah. Cool. And now that I've submitted that form once, if we go back to list, we'll see it there. Computer won't turn on. Now we do have all those custom fields that are not showing up. So basically what that means is that they exist on the task, but they're not being seen on this view. So the information is available, but just not being pulled. So we can add the column and add those fields to it. Cool. And we can make different views, which will, I guess, have different columns. So we can change, one that sees it from this perspective, a different one that sees it from another perspective, etc. Okay. Next question is, how are we solving these? So for example, if we do have a whole lot of them, everyone will kind of have a workflow. Maybe your workflow is to assign it to someone, and then you might have a series of statuses. So here I've just got it set to closed, but we can of course go in and edit the list statuses. So it might be kind of, new request, Might need to validate it to make sure they're not just struggling with a training issue. And then perhaps, the various stages you take an issue through, depending on what kind of issues come through. So you might select in progress, then waiting for the person who reported it to let you know that it is fixed. So waiting for confirmation and then complete, for example. So computer won't turn on. Maybe that one, we would talk to him and we'd find out that it wasn't actually a big issue. We just needed to plug it in. And then we might jump it straight to complete. Or actually, if it's a hardware issue, we'll say, okay, that's fair. We need to then start working on that. Now, all of these have gone to green. You can actually change the colors as well. You probably don't want a whole bunch of green statuses. Cool. So that kind of creates a bit of a workflow. You may also, depending on how you work, have this as like the intake form, and then maybe have other lists or folders where you're kind of processing the work. So it might be that here, no actual work gets done. It just kind of comes in here and then gets moved somewhere else for it to actually be finished, particularly if you have kind of like personal folders or like a project management style set up to kind of get through things. Cool. All right. Next, we're going to jump onto some workflow. Okay, so assuming that someone is doing only help desk as their kind of main role in your company, what they would probably do, I often direct people to the notifications and inbox. Notifications would be useful if someone else is assigning tasks to them, or if they have their notifications set up to show all new tasks. So notify them of all new tasks. Currently, that's not limited to any one space, so most people will turn that off because they'll literally be notified of any task in any space. So yeah, probably people will, instead of using notifications, just come to this list, and I imagine they would add it to favorites so they can quickly get there. And then once they've kind of assigned out the ones that are for theirs, they can go to the inbox and just see a quick view of all of their tasks in one place. And you'd probably give them, due dates based on the difficulty of the issue and when you expect it to get done. So within the inbox would be all the ones that are in progress. So either you've already started on them or the due date has already passed. And then ones that are coming up in the future, ones that are done, and ones that are assigned to you but don't have any dates. So the inbox could be a really good place to work out of once you've kind of got everything properly assigned, however that works for your company. Yeah, and then if you're not working in inbox, the other thing you'd probably do is just jump from the favorite to IT requests and start working out of here, pulling things through the statuses, and then probably within the task, putting in some more description about what the actual issue is, and then potentially, collaborating with other people on how to get it done, particularly if you need, admin access to upgrade privileges or something else, etc., etc. We can add attachments if that's necessary, and then break it down to subtasks and checklists if needed. Checklists could be really useful here. If you do have really common IT issues that have a set of steps, you can save that set of steps as a process and then save it as a template. Anytime the issue comes up again, you can simply drop in the template. Here I've got step 1, step 2, and I will save it as a template, and I'll call it process 1. And so now anytime this type of thing comes up again, we can simply go add checklist, template, and we'll grab process 1. So, if it was a larger process, 10 or 20 steps, that would save quite a lot of time. If you are time tracking, time estimating, that's all available. And due dates could be quite useful here to, I guess, kind of like map out when things are going to be done by, particularly if someone else needs to come in and let the person know. If you have a central, number for IT department, someone calls in and say, hey, when's my issue going to be fixed? They can just look it up themselves rather than having to bother you or, start calling around and find the information. It's all very easy to get to. Priority can be turned on and off for the space, but it could be quite useful for just, prioritizing issues. So one other thing we had in our use case is the need to escalate. So escalation is interesting here. You could create, a custom field for it. You have like a drop down and say this one's escalated. And then maybe whoever is processing the escalated issues, they'd have their own view and they'd filter it based on that custom field. So they'll just see the escalated ones. But probably the easiest thing to do would just be to tag in the manager. So you say, all right, let me change my manager. This needs your input. Probably would be good to do both that and some sort of visual indication that it's been escalated. So if it was me, I might do both the custom field and that. And then you can assign the task if we need to make sure that gets done before this task gets closed. So depending on how you would prefer to escalate, there's a couple of different ways to do it. We don't have like an inbuilt approval type system where you can't close the task until your manager has approved it or something like that. But working with the tools we have, there's a lot of ways of doing that visually. Cool. In terms of custom fields, so we've already got a few. We might add another one I might just create the escalation one. We might have like normal, hi, and send to the CEO. No one actually has that, but I think it's funny. We'll give them some colors, they look nice and pretty, and then we can simply select them on any task. We have a lot of different custom field types. Probably you'll use the rest of these in terms of what you want on your form to collect information. So a good one is files. By default, you can always add a attachment field to a form, and that will put the file into the attachments down here. However, file custom fields can allow you to separate it. So maybe you need one file for a screenshot and a different file for the error log or something. And you can have, I guess you can create different areas for them by creating the custom fields. So you have one custom field for the screenshot, one for the error log, and then those two files can be attached in different places and seen in different places. Otherwise, pretty standard stuff: checkbox, date, drop down, email, numbers and money, text, progress, rating. So rating could be, you could allow users to kind of prioritize how important they think it is, and then leave your priority column open for you to prioritize work. So that could be another way of getting around that if you don't want to have to use priority for both. So you can use a different emoji. I wonder if there's an exclamation one. So then people can, rate how urgent they think this issue is, just so you can take that into account. Cool. Okay. Any questions so far? I've got none typed in. If you do have any, just let me know, and I will cover them probably as we go. Views are a fairly core feature of ClickUp. Probably most of you have seen it already or used it, but just in case anyone hasn't, I'm just going to quickly make another view. So we have a whole bunch of different view types, and this kind of allows you to visualize work in different ways. The key thing that I really like to show people is how you can customize views. So yeah, you can create a board view or Kanban view, and that's great. But you can also create two list views, have this one showing everything, and have the new one showing just a section of the data. So for example, I'll name this, so let's do that. That's escalation use case. So here we want to show that escalated field. We're going to filter on it. We don't have to show it to filter on it, but it just makes it more sensible if we do. And then let's check in all these other custom fields as well. And then I'm going to create date created. Date created is really handy for this because it'll tell you when the form was submitted. So because the form creates the task, that will tell us when this form was submitted, and it'll let us know kind of how long it's been there. I'm going to take priority off here because they're all priority. I don't like it side scrolling. I mean, each to their own, but it just bothers me. And then I'm going to filter that by our custom field of escalation. I'm going to say escalation is high or send to CEO. So we can't do both of those together. So I'm going to do an or operator and then put it in twice. So escalation is high or escalation is sent to the CEO. We'll save that. And that's currently showing none, so I'll just go and flick this one up to high. So we can see one there. And now we could group it by statuses. We could also group it by something else, priority, etc. Because we're not showing priority, it could actually be useful to have that in the grouping, because we can still see the statuses with this little colored dot here. So we have filtering, grouping. We can also sort by things. So I'd probably sort by the date created, because I want to be getting through things in the order they were sent in. We can also filter by text if we start typing something in, or by a person. I probably won't do that here because escalated issues, I want to see everything. And subtasks, I want to see them straight away. So I'll click on expanded. The hide option, or the compact option, will just show them as a little dot. I'll show you what that looks like. My internet's a smidge slow today. So expanded, they'll show below. Compact, that'll show this little dot that you can expand manually. Cool. And then I'll save all of that. There's also some options in the view settings here, but I won't go over that today. It's probably not quite on topic for IT. And of course, you have your extra fields. Okay, so that's a quick overview of views. Next, I want to hit dashboards. So dashboards are a new feature for reporting, and it's got lots of options. So for IT help desk, we probably want to cover things like, how many open issues are there, how quickly are we getting through them, what's the urgency of the open issues. So if we go to dashboards here, we can create a new dashboard. So I'll call this IT help desk. Okay, sorry, I was just answering a question here. Yes, the recording will be available afterwards. And yes, I do move very fast. Apologies for that. Basically, I'm going to cover these two use cases, and then I will probably slow down a bit and just answer any questions. So if you do have time to around for that, there'll be time available. Yeah. Okay. So again, dashboards, I will just show you kind of the basics. But here, if we add a widget, we can select which type. Now these are banded somewhat based on your plan. So for example, these ones here are very customizable, but they're available in the business plan, whereas these ones have a kind of a set purpose or use case, and they're available mostly on the unlimited plan. Of course, business has both. Cool. So what I'm going to show is, I'll show these custom ones because it has like the maximum complexity, and that way these ones are actually easier to set up. So let's grab a pie chart first, and we want to show what the urgency is like. So what we'll do is we'll select our space. You could instead just select a folder or a list, but in this case it's the same thing. And then we'll group by priority. We'll show all the priorities. We could just select to show some. And based on the value, so we could give so basically with tasks, one task equals 1 on the chart, but we could have it like time estimate. So if it's a 10-minute task, then it equals 10 on the chart, whereas a 2-hour task equals 120. So we can kind of adjust it based on that. And the same thing with all these custom fields. For now, we'll go simple, just number of tasks. Include subtasks, no filter. Let's display it as a percentage, and then we'll add that as a widget. So here we can see we've got 2 tasks because we have 1 task and 1 subtask, and 50% is urgent, 50% is non-urgent. And if we hover over it, we can see the exact number. So once we kind of get more tasks in there, that will start to get a bit more complex. So like you can see here, I've got 10, 6, 4, but it's quite a nice visualization. Okay, so that's urgency. We also want to see the total number of open tasks. I'd probably do this with a calculation. So here I'd see what open requests perhaps. And again, select our IT webinar space. And we'll just count tasks. We won't try and calculate anything else. We can put a custom unit on it. So we'd call it tasks. Put that to the right. That's just a display thing. And subtasks, include them. Yes, so it'll also count tasks and subtasks. Actually, maybe I just want to count main tasks here, not subtasks. And we'll go add widget. So we can see we've got 1 open task. So I'll make this smaller. Actually, this one can go, there we go. And so we can start to have some metrics up the top. We can also do some more complex things like tasks closed yesterday. But the settings are going to be very similar. Again, we'll go custom unit tasks. Or actually, we might say requests rather than tasks. But anyway, so the way we're going to make it be only yesterday is we'll go and add a filter. So here I want the close date. So this is the date that it went into the final green status. And we'll say that one is yesterday and add widget. Now it's going to be say 0 because we've only just created this space. But it'd be nice to kind of see, you can make it closed today one, closed yesterday, and just keep track of some metrics and how things are going. Cool, got a couple of questions here. So the current use case we're talking about is IT help desk. I don't know if you might be talking to each other, that's fine. Cool, we'll keep going. All right, so that gives you a bit of an idea of dashboards. There's lots more that's possible. So line charts show data over time. Bar charts can show the interrelation of two different kind of metrics and how they relate to each other. Pie chart and battery chart are really good for showing breakdowns. Calculation does metrics. Portfolio gives you a really good overview of lists and folders. So if you had the multiple forms with multiple lists then going on, that could be great. And text block, text, chat. Also, some other things that might be interesting available in the business plan is the sprint widgets. These are really based around kind of seeing how much stuff is done over time. So burn up and velocity chart and possibly even cumulative flow could be really useful for this. So burn up will show you how many tasks are being done and also how many new tasks are being added. So let's go, we'll use lists as the source. We'll say IT webinar. And this is time-based, so we'll say, let's say this week, number of tasks, add widget. And hopefully we've got enough data here for this chart to make sense. While we're waiting for that one, we might just also create a velocity chart. So same thing, lists, select our IT webinar space, last 7 days, great, include subtasks, sure, add widget. Now my Wi-Fi might not be up to this actually. But anyway, we'll have these pulled through in a bit. And then the third one there, I won't actually make it, but it's cumulative flow. So what that does is it shows a task. I guess it's basically like a stacked line chart. So a task will come in, it'll be gray, and then it'll start changing through the colors. And so we can see kind of progress through the statuses. And that allows us to look for bottlenecks and things like that. So it's a bit hard to see what this chart's actually doing. But basically we've got a gray line, which is the scope. So that's how many tasks there are total. And a green line, which is the number that are done. So as the kind of people submit forms, this gray line will go up, and then we'll chase it with the green line as we're getting things done. So it really helps just to see both those metrics together in the same place. The velocity chart measures how many tasks have been done this week, last week, etc., which is why it's currently blank because no tasks have been done. But that'll give us an idea of kind of how many requests are we getting through on a week-by-week basis, and it'll give us an average. Cool, so that's dashboards. I want to quickly also touch on integrations. So there's a couple here that might be useful. Zendesk, if people are, particularly if you're doing this in a public way, bugs or something, Zendesk can be really good for reaching back out to people and communicating with them. If you do use that as kind of like a help desk, contact us type software, same thing with Intercom. We support those, so you can kind of use those to communicate and also link them into ClickUp. I believe Support B, similar. They connect with us, they've created the integration. We of course have Zapier, so if you are using anything else, we have a bunch of triggers and actions, so you can connect up with that. I might just show you our triggers and actions so you can see what's going to be possible on our end. So we have 4 triggers, new task, new folder, and new list, and then also task changes. And that's not everything on the task, it is certain metrics, I think like priority, due date, etc. And all of these are instant, so you don't have to wait the normal 5 to 15 minute time period that Zapier normally has. And then if you've triggered something somewhere, you can take actions on ClickUp, including creating things, folder, task, list, and checklist, and also posting comments and attachments, tracking time, and creating new subtasks. Cool. Okay, so that's basically it for our help desk use case. Now we'll jump into our compliance use case. So basically what I've kind of gathered from compliance is it's probably going to look like a large list of tasks. And again, you could have one list or multiple lists, just depending on how you like to break it up. For example, if you have multiple different types of compliance, they might have a list each, or you might break it up to have like the one-off tasks in one list, and then the recurring, monthly in another list, quarterly in another list, yearly in another list, just depending on what suits your brain better. None of those are necessarily more right than any other. So here I'm just going to make the one list. And then in this list, it'll just be all the things that need to get done to complete this compliance. So I actually don't have too many good examples here, but let's think of, we're going to be doing a test of something, let's say database. You might have to, ensure security on something or other. I'm sure you guys know this far better than I do. And basically, they're likely to either be once-off things. So again, you can set up your statuses. So perhaps that goes through a thing, or like a set of statuses, or perhaps it just goes straight to closed. But I imagine you also have quite a number of tasks that need to be done on a repeated basis. So what I'm going to go through is how to set up recurring tasks. So here, if we set a due date, or we can just jump straight to recurring, we can make this task happen again and again after it's closed. So we can choose the time period. We have daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly. Periodically is a certain number of days after it's closed. So it could be, every 57 days. And do note that this is recurring when either done or closed. So it's not on a schedule. It's based on the trigger of when you close it. If you do need tasks to recur at a certain period, regardless of whether they're closed or not, there is a way of doing that. We'll talk about that in a minute. But this particular functionality is just when it's closed. And custom gives you some other options. It can be, every certain number of days, weeks, or months, and you can choose which days of the week you want it to have happen. So it could be, 3 times a week, etc. And then create new task. If you don't click this, then what will happen is it'll just move that one task along. So it'll change the start and due date to move it along, or you can create a new task, and then how long it recurs for. Pretty basic. However, we also have the legacy recurring options. And this is quite a bit more complex. So here we have repeat schedule or repeat trigger. Trigger is similar to what we had. It repeats on when a task hits a certain status, and you can choose it there. So it could be one that's only halfway through the process. And we can also change the due date, and we have some extra advanced options. Probably what you'll use legacy recurring for is if you want it on a schedule. So it could be every 1 day, week, month, year. And if you do choose something like a week, you can choose which days you want it to have happen on. Even if you choose just day, you can choose to skip certain days like weekends. You can choose a time, you can choose when it ends, and then you can choose if you want to, again, change the due date or create a new task. Within the advanced options, depending on what you selected here, these will change a little bit, but you can, sorry, let's just change this to create new task, and you can choose what gets copied over. It might not be everything. So you can change when the due date will be, what the status of the new task will be, and then whether you want to copy the first task or the newest task. So if you kind of make changes over time and you want to always show you the newest version, you click newest task. If you want to make changes and then not have them reflected on the next task, you'd click first task, just so it's always showing you the original template, I guess, that you kind of set up. Again, you can click only recur if completed, so it will skip the next iteration if the first one hasn't been completed, and things like that. So that's a very quick overview of what else is possible. So for most compliance repeating tasks, I would go repeat schedule, say it's once a quarter. So that would be every 3 months. And we could do on a date or by a week. Let's just go the first of the month. Time doesn't matter, ends never, create new task, and I'd set the due date to the next occurrence. What that means is it's going to be the due date is going to be the day that it recurs on, or actually you could do, days after, like 2 days after, the next recurrence. I'll set the status to 2, that's fine. Copy the first task probably, because I imagine we're going to kind of set it up the right way and then just always have it be that. And yeah, set recurring. So that way, when I complete this task, it's going to disappear, and it won't reappear until that 3 months are up. So we're going to have quite a clean, interface here. And then after 3 months, it'll suddenly pop back up and say, hey, remember to do this within the next 2 days. So that's quite handy. Another way we can kind of organize things is if we do set up our list the way we want it here, we could save this as a template. So we go save as template here, give it a name. So for example, I've got some here, click save as template. And then every, maybe it's a time period or when something happens, we say, hey, we need to run through that process again. Let's go on our space here, this plus button, and go template, list from template, and then choose, the list that we have set up. And we've got some options here. Remap due dates is an interesting one. So we can create the date of the due date of the very first task. And then all the other tasks will kind of follow along that, keeping the same spacing. So that can be really handy to have. Then we'll hit create list. We do need to give it a name. And that can kind of, pull all that through, all set up the way that we wanted it to have it. So I think recurring will be the more common use case, but if you do prefer to use templates, that option is there as well. You can template, as we saw earlier, checklists, tasks, lists, folders, spaces, basically everything, even views and filters as well. Okay, next up is dependency and linking. So perhaps we have, a whole list of tasks, but it's not just real simple. Certain things need to happen before other things. They need to be done in, more of a complex way. So what we can do here is use this dependencies button. This is a ClickUp, so it does need to be enabled for this whole space. I'm just going to create myself a second task here. So I have something to link to. Here I can create a dependency. This purple one is just an arbitrary link. It'll let us know that they're both related to each other, but that's about it. It doesn't tell us how they're related. More common for dependencies is waiting on or blocking. So for example, if this task can't be finished, so this test database task can't be finished until something else is, we'll say, okay, it's waiting on that task. So it's waiting on test 2. And then on this task, we'll say this task is waiting on test 2. If we go to test 2, we'll say this task is blocking test database. So you can always create both. It's just whichever task you happen to be looking at now. If it's the waiting on one or blocking one, you can just choose it and it will create the link between both of them. Awesome. Okay. Cool. We've got a question about forms. Yes, I will get to that. I might do that one at the end. But that's a good question. Cool. So that's basically dependencies. The dependencies show up with these little icons here. If you are a Gantt chart user, you can also see the relationships there as well. Now, they do have to be scheduled to appear on the Gantt chart, of course. I'll just chuck those on. You'll see I put them in the wrong order here. You'll see it's got this line link between it. So if you do have quite a complex setup and you want to look at Gantt chart, you can kind of see how things need to flow into each other to get the whole thing done. Okie dokie, what are we at? We're at 7:44. Okay, this is actually taking a little bit longer than I thought. So I'll keep going at a decent pace. So next up is integrations. Now I've been told that ServiceNow is a really common IT application. We don't have a link directly to it, but we can of course use Zapier to connect them together. So let's go ServiceNow. Cool. So we can either trigger it from ClickUp or trigger it from ServiceNow. It looks like ServiceNow might not have any triggers. So it's just based on what their Zapier integration can do. Okay, so when a new record is created in ServiceNow, they can trigger something. They can also, if we trigger something, create a new record or update a record, and also search a record. So basically what that means is that anything that happens on ClickUp can cause them to find and update a record in ServiceNow or create a new one. If you create a new record in ServiceNow, you can then do a bunch of things on ClickUp, create a new folder, task, list, or where are my actions? Or, post a comment and things like that. So there's actually some decent possibilities there, but you'll have to set it up through Zapier. SSO is a big thing. There's not a ton to say there other than we support it. We have Google SSO on Business Plan, and then various other ones, including Okta and the Microsoft one on enterprise level. The Microsoft one has a little bit trickier. There's certain versions that we support and don't, but it's available. Ask more about it if that's something you need. Cool. Okay, docs. So another thing is doc view. And we use this a lot. It's basically a Word page type thing. You can give it a name and then start writing things down. You can also create multiple pages, and you can also embed pages within pages. So within that one, I have another page inside called page 1.1. And this can go to 5 levels, so I can have a page within that one as well. So this would be, what am I doing here? Page 1.1.1. So if you are doing documentation, particularly for compliance or anything else, it could be a good place to just do you can have your full write out in here, divide it up into sections. These can be collapsed. You can embed pictures, videos, tables, all your stuff in here. You can even embed spreadsheets, although you probably would use the embed view for that, just so that you're kind of got a bigger space to work with. But it's not, you don't have some of the features that Word would have, like, conditional formatting and Excel thing, but, mail merge and all those kind of crazy extras. But as far as, useful functionality, it's pretty decent. And then you can kind of have it on your, compliance list. So when you're working through this, you can just flick over and find something. You're not having to go to a totally different app and different place to try and find things. So that could be quite helpful. Dashboards for compliance, you're probably just looking at completion amounts. So, probably I'd do that through, you could use some calculations, get some metrics. Another one that could be good, if you have multiple lists, portfolio would be good. So you can simply just add those lists. So for example, let's add IT, help desk, and compliance. And it's just going to give you some real basic overview. This is what the name is. This is the progress. On this little plus button here, we can add and remove columns. So I'd say let's have a look at statuses. I don't need list color. Let's look at completed and overdue. The end date, start date, and priority are for the entire list. So you may or may not use that. And then you got the time logging and estimates. Probably what I'd use the most is the battery chart. So here I'd say, compliance type 1 completion. We'd select our location. So it's going to be our compliance list. And we'd group by probably status to let us know where it's at, if it's done or not. We'll go all statuses based on tasks. You will include subtasks here because they are extra work. And then we'll add the widget. And we're just going to get this kind of status bar saying, okay, you got 1 complete, 2 that are not, and we kind of visually see how it's going overall. Cool. So Neil asked about highlighting text in different colors. Yep, so that's a feature on docs. So for example, if I had some text here, and then I was to highlight that, it'll give me some options. One option is to highlight it in different colors. I think that option is here. So it's just giving it a background essentially. So I'm not sure if that was what you were referring to, but that is a function. Okay, and then last one is goals. So similar to using the dashboard to kind of see the completion here, we can also use goals. So for example, if I go into my goals here, create a new goal for, compliance. We can give it an owner if we want, who it's shared with, what the end date is and what the description is. And then within that goal, we can have different targets. So my target here is just going to be, it's just going to be the same thing, compliance. You could have targets for different areas of the compliance. You can kind of separate it out. I'm going to select tasks, so it'll update automatically based on how many tasks are done. And I'm going to add my compliance list. So we now have 3 tasks. We can see one of them is done. And the neat thing is it's going to give us this 33% complete. If I were to go into this list and then open one of the tasks on it, it's not going to work the way I expected. Okay, so one thing that is neat that it looks like we haven't implemented for the list level yet, if you do add individual tasks, I might show you what that looks like. It'll also pop up on the task itself. So for example here, okay, compliance has one list. I want to add extra things. I'll add a task. So now I'm actually adding these tasks twice, which you'd never do. But anyway, it's helpful for this example. And either I've done something wrong or I'm just forgetting something silly. Let's just refresh to make sure it's not that. Okay, yep, ignore me. So what I was looking for is a little icon up here saying this task is part of this goal. And for some reason I'm doing something wrong. But anyway, there is a possibility. It should be in the document if you want to see how to do that. Okay, we've got a couple of questions. So any options to filter or group tasks by folder or list name? Yes, we recently, in the last couple of months, implemented that. So what you can do is filter, and you'd only use this if you're kind of looking at a high level. So let's say we're looking at everything. We could filter based on location. So we say, okay, we only want to see tasks that are in this folder, and this list. So it's pretty dynamic. We don't have a grouping based on hierarchy, but that filtering should be quite helpful there. Okay, awesome. Okay, so Neil, I'm seeing your question there. I'm just going to check. I'm going to quickly touch on a couple of other use cases, but I will actually answer your question now. So you just asked about rich text formatting, subheading text in different colors. I don't actually think we have different colors. We do have subheadings. So let's jump back into our doc view here. So again, if we were to highlight some text, we've got this normal. We've also got heading 1, 2, 3, but I don't believe we have text coloring. Yeah, but yeah, we do have the headings. Cool. If anyone wants to put in questions and other use cases you'd like me to cover, now would be a really good time for that. We've probably got at least 7 minutes. I might stay a little bit late just to answer some more questions. I also wanted to touch on the ideas of a couple of other use cases. So, incidence reports, you'll probably make them very similar to help desk. We've got a form that's coming into a list, and then you can kind of deal with that how you want from there. Inventorying tasks. From what I've heard, most people will have a separate software for this. So you probably wouldn't do it in ClickUp. If you are small and you wanted to, I mean, go right ahead. You could have a list where each task is a piece of equipment. You can have information about it. Maybe the assignee is who currently is using it, etc., etc. But if you are just using another software for that, you might just have a list for tasks associated with it. So maybe once a week you need to do this type of review. So it wouldn't be actually doing the inventorying itself, but it could be tasks related to that. Might be useful. We did have a couple of people say that they were interested in the business continuity disaster recovery planning. So again, I imagine that's a whole thing. You probably wouldn't do that within ClickUp. Well, you could, using conversations and comments and descriptions and such. But probably what you'd use ClickUp for there is to organize the tasks that need to be done. So, okay, we need to do this report, this test, this, discussion, and you'd have a a very project management style thing where you're just going through all of that. And we did have a question about project management as well. So I'll have a quick look at my project management styles here. So I mean, like waterfall is the basic. You can do agile as well. But I mean, using project management in ClickUp, you're probably just using the basic features. So, you know, assigning people, assigning start and due dates, dependencies if you need them, information about what needs to get done, conversation about, you know, going through the process of getting it done, and then kind of your statuses. Breaking it down as subtasks and checklists if you need. So that's kind of the basic functionality. In terms of how to do that well, that starts to get into, you know, just training of staff and how you choose to set up your, you know, norms and expectations in your company. If you are doing agile, which I don't know, it might not be that common for IT, we'd probably just add in a custom field for sprint, and then you can use filters to group by sprints. You can also pull sprints into dashboards. So that's a very, very brief overview, but gives you a bit of an idea of project management. Cool. Okay, that's what I wanted to cover. So I'm now pretty free to just kind of answer questions and be available for whatever you guys would like to hear. And I do have a couple of questions waiting. Okay, so Neil asks, when showing complete tasks in list view, any way to get them to appear at the bottom? Or can we arrange the position of the status label? Yes, so with any grouping or sorting, if you click on it, it's got this little up and down arrow, and you can simply reverse the order. So what that now means is that complete are always at the bottom of each group. I might just go into a single list, that's a bit easier to see. So here's complete at the top, switch to complete at the bottom. You can't like drag them around. If you do want to change the order, you can do that by going into the list statuses. So they will appear in this order. Complete always has to be at the bottom. It doesn't have to be called complete, but it does always have to be green. But these ones, you know, you can drag them around, reorder them however you wish. Okay, I'll jump to Tim's. I haven't answered one of your questions yet. To notify the person who submitted the task of the resolution. Good question. Would you recommend a Zapier setup or using a third-party system? Very good question. So with a Zapier setup, you'd have to have some sort of trigger, which is not going to work great because the triggers we have are new task, list, or folder. So you're probably not going to be creating any one of those or a change to the task. And I wish we had more information on Zapier about what these ones are. There's 4 things, and I tend to forget what they are. I don't think one of them is comment. I'll see if we have a doc on that to jog my memory. Doesn't go into enough detail. Yeah, you can try it. I think there's a good chance Zapier wouldn't work well. So I mean, if you have them submit their email and you click on the email, it could just take you straight to Gmail. So that'd be a really simple setup. On the form, have them submit their email, and then in ClickUp, click on their email, a new email is created in Gmail. But if you did have kind of doing bulk and you wanted to use something like Zendesk or Intercom, you could have it so that the link to the thread in Zendesk or Intercom kind of appears on your task, and you can click that. It takes you to Zendesk. You can reply from there. So yeah, that could work quite well. Yeah. Okay. Can custom fields be shown in board view? Yes, they can. So in board view, you have to go to this view settings. This is not a board view. Where's a board view? Here we go. View settings and then custom fields here, and you can choose which custom fields appear on each card. Okay, Neil asked, can we touch on some clever ways of making your form available in public? Cool. Can I use a Facebook? Can I use a link in Facebook or another creative way? Perhaps triggering branching in the form. Okay, so yes, I mean, you've got the embed and the link, so you can share the link anywhere. You can share it on Facebook, Twitter. You can embed it into a website. You can embed it into anywhere you can embed things. You could even embed a form into an embed view on ClickUp for some reason. Anything like that. Other creative ways. So in terms of branching, you have two options. You have the option to send a different form link based on what it is. So if, for example, you're using some sort of like bulk email sending software, you might have it set up so that it chooses a different form based on conditions. Alternatively, you can have a hidden field set up and you pass information through that hidden field so that they all come into the same list, but they are differentiated. So let's just check. I'm also not 100% sure on which ones can be hidden. I know it's in the docs somewhere. Okay, it's not dropped down. I think it's just text. Let me just check that real quick so I can give you a correct answer. ClickUp form hidden field. So which fields can be used? Okay, so email, text, and URL. So you'd probably use text, and then you do a filter based on that text custom field to differentiate. So you'd have one list, but you'd have multiple views depending on how you've branched things out. So one view for each branch, if that makes sense. Yeah, so that's the two options there. Other creative places you can put it, not too sure. I mean, embed and link are pretty broad, so just anything that you can think of, really. Okay, Tim asked, the trigger would be when the task moves to a certain status, right? I'm not quite sure what you're talking about there, Tim. Is that for recurring tasks or for IC for the Zapier integration? Yes, that would likely work. The question then is, what are you sending to the client? And it might pull through description and comments. Yes, it's possible that would work. Off the top of my head, I can't think that all the way through, but yeah, good chance that might work. Awesome. Okay, I think I've answered all the questions there. If you do have a question that hasn't been answered, just chuck it in chat and prompt me, and I'll make sure I get to it. Cool. Otherwise, I hope this has been really helpful. This recording will be sent out, I think it might be automatically, hopefully fairly soon in the next day or two. And we've got a bunch of webinars coming up on various topics. I've also got a dashboard one coming up if you are interested in finding out more about that. Otherwise, have a fantastic day, and I hope you're really enjoying using ClickUp.